be here, and I feel very honored that I get to share information, because that's what it is. And it's not my information. I read a lot, and I ask a lot of questions. In fact, I understand sometimes they can be kind of annoying. I've been told. Perhaps what I'm going to talk about today isn't going to be what you expect, because kindness has many faces. Kindness comes in all different shades and colors and beauty. And to give you an example, like, I really believe kindness is kind of selfish, because it feels so good when you do it. So sometimes I'm not sure who got the best deal, the giver, the receiver. And we know for a fact that people, when they receive kindness, their vibration raises. We also know that when you give it, your vibration raises. And we also know that anyone observing it. So it's kind of a win-win-win situation. There's no doubt about it. There was this young man, and he was a foster child. He had been a foster child for many years, and finally he got a family to adopt him. And one thing I will say, I always teach with stories, and they're all true. I usually can tell you mostly where I get them from, a lot of them from Chicken Soup for the Soul. And anyway, this young man was just angry, so angry. And his mother did not know what to do. He said, no one ever did anything for me, and I'm not going to do anything for anybody else. So she just racked her brain like, what can I get this kid to do? Because he was a teenager. And finally she said, do you think that you could hold a door for somebody when they're coming in behind you? And he said, well, yeah, I might be able to manage that. Not too much to it. Well, he does that once, twice, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 40 times. And he goes back to his mom and he said, I like being kind. It is such a good feeling. So he starts a nonprofit group to help foster children get over their anger. So you just never know where even encouraging someone else to be kind can really change their life, and consequently other lives as it goes along. One of the problems I think we have as a society is that we have this thought that no matter where we are on the rung of the ladder, we need to go higher. It's not okay to be okay where you are. And I've told this story before, but I was going to a gym. I walked 5 miles a day. I was as fit as I'd ever been, and I accomplished all my goals. And the owner of the gym says, well, now we need to get higher, do something harder. No, we don't. I'm not going to the Olympics. I just want to be fit. And at that time, that just really struck me that that is how we live our life so often. And what we also do is there is so much static and there is so much information out there that I remember in the 80s that, oh my God, the children in Biafra are starving and I'm overwhelmed. You see all these little kids and it's just heartbreaking. But not once did I think to check and see if my neighbor had enough food. There's always something we can do, no matter how small. A lot of times I'm asked, how can I rescue animals and not be burned out? Because I can't focus on what I can't do. I have to focus on what I do. I have to focus on who I have. All 12 little tails and paws and ears and big brown eyes. Because if I don't do that, we become paralyzed. And we're so overwhelmed by how much needs doing that we don't do anything. And I've been there, and it's not a very good place to be. It's not a very fun place to be. That is a fact. And sometimes what happens is we do a kindness by what we don't do. Or what we do do. There's a word called cledon. It's C-L-E-D-O-N. It's a word from the Egyptians. They believed that if you asked for guidance, that Apollo would granted to you. But they believed that you might overhear a conversation. You might see a sign. You might see a license plate. Now, not then. And that could be your answer. So I know one time my stepson said, why on earth do you wear shirts with stuff on them, writing on them? Well, I believe that maybe one day I can be the answer. Because one day, unbeknownst to me, Michael and I were the answer. There was a gentleman who lived beside us who was a neo-Nazi. I knew it. I knew all about him because I knew his granddaughter. And we had a little church then, and one day he walks into my little church because we live right next door, and I went, what have I done to deserve this? And even a bigger question, what the heck am I going to do with this guy? I don't know, because I knew about all his beliefs. Well, it turns out I actually didn't realize how that all started until about a month ago. And he was communicating with me on Messenger, and that day that his life changed was just prior to coming to our church. He had said, I don't know what to do. I don't know that I believe in God, but if there's a God, I just really need to be told what to do. He comes over to our house to use the phone. I never even knew that, I wasn't home. He looks above our door, and we have a sign that says, love one another. And I didn't know until just like a month ago that was his answer to his prayer. And he totally changed. He came to our church for about 4 years. He left a totally different human being. And so you just never know when any positivity could affect somebody amazingly. And I never for a minute thought when we hung that up there that anyone was going to change their life because it said love one another. But he said to me that was the direct answer. And I realized I had never been doing that. And so he even actually made friends with some black people. So he really did change his life. And sometimes what people need is for us to see through their pain and see the potential. There was a young couple in Canada who gave birth to their first child, and she had Down syndrome. The father was so angry that the nurses did not want him to be in the room alone with the baby. They were terrified he would do something. Sometimes I cry telling this story, so just be prepared. And so anyway, this nurse that had been a nurse for years and years, she said, I want you to come into my office, I want to talk to you. So she says to him, I know you are angry because you love that baby so much, and you are terrified that she's not going to have the life you see for her, or you saw for her. He said, yeah, that's exactly it. He became the leader of the foundation in Canada for children with Down syndrome. She was the first Down syndrome child to graduate from regular school, grade 12. So he took that anger, and that nurse knew that if she could just focus that anger, that miracles could happen. And that is what happened. And so his daughter was the very first one that, didn't go to special ed. I'm sure they helped her. And, so often we forget to be kind to ourselves. And we really need to be. When you've done something that you wish you had done differently, for heaven's sakes, treat yourself like you would your best friend. Imagine your best friend doing it and thinking, what would I say to that friend? I would tell them they're still okay. It's all good. And like Louise Hay always says, when we know better, we do better. And that today we aren't the same person we were yesterday. So there's always room for this amazing growth, and we do grow all the time. There was a farm during the Second World War that was operated by Japanese Americans. And of course, most of us know what happened. They got sent to camps and they got taken out of their farm and they lost everything they had. So this one couple, that happened to them. They left this amazing farm that they had worked so hard at. And of course the day came and the war was over. And they get off the train because they get brought back. And they see their neighbor there to pick them up. And they're quite surprised. I mean, they liked their neighbor, but they weren't best buds or anything like that. They were just, nice people doing the same kind of job. And so they get towards their farm. Nobody said anything to them. They get towards their farm, and oh my goodness, it looks like it's still there. How can that be? How can that farm still be there? They've been gone for I don't know how many years. Well, the gentleman who went to get them from the train took them to their farm. And they went into the kitchen and saw a pile of money on the table. He had ran their farm for them the whole time that they were in the camp. And he said, the only money I took was the money to pay the workers. And they said, why did you do this? And they said, because that's what I would have wanted someone to do for me. And that's a big one. And sometimes the kindnesses we do that change people's lives are much smaller. Like I was at Little Caesars not that long ago. And there was a lady who didn't have enough money to pay for 2 pizzas. She was missing $1. And I saw that she was really getting frustrated, and she said, I'm going to go out to my car and I'm just going to look for change. Maybe I can come up with $1. And so anybody would have done this. I went and paid the $1. And so when she got back, she said, I can't have the second pizza. You can't, just keep that one. I'm so sorry. And the guy says, no, it's paid for. Take your pizzas. And I mean, to me, that really is not much. I saw her about 2 hours later in a store, and she looks at her husband and she said, that's the lady that did it. I mean, I truly thought by then she would have forgotten all about it. It was $1. And then one time I was in Walmart and I had about $45 worth of groceries, and I forgot my wallet in the car. And of course you feel like an idiot. There's 10 people behind you and they're chomping at the bit and you're going, oh, no. So I said, well, just park it and I'll come back. The lady behind me said, are you a nurse? I said, yeah. She said, well, my mom was a nurse, and to honor her, I'm going to pay for your groceries. Oh. And so she did. And then I said something about, she lived on base. I said, yeah, my husband's a veteran. And she said, then that's 2 good reasons to pay for your groceries. Mm-hmm. I've never forgotten that. I mean, to me, that was quite a bit of money as well, but just the thought that she would do that. Out of the blue. I've never seen her since, and I've never forgotten how good that felt, that we were being, acknowledged. And sometimes that's all we need to do. We just need to acknowledge another. That's why in the movie they said, I see you. Because we all want to be seen. Every one of us. We want to be heard. And we want to be seen. And when we can do that for somebody else, it is amazing. And way past wonderful. Another thing that's really good for us to learn is to stay in touch with our intuition. This gentleman was driving home, and all of a sudden he got this voice in his head, and it said, go buy a gallon of milk. He said, I don't need any milk. Go buy a gallon of milk. So he goes and buys a gallon of milk. He gets back in the car, and the voice says, I kid you not, this is Chicken Soup for the Soul, miracles. And he said, the voice says, go to, Pine Street, door number 583, whatever. He goes there. He knocks on the door. A woman answers. He opens, she opens the door, and she just starts crying. She sees the gallon of milk. She had been praying for a gallon of milk because she had nothing to feed her baby. So we never know when we listen to our intuition. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. It seems really crazy, but it doesn't matter. We need to really listen to what we are being told. And we really need to learn that where we are is okay. And we might be somewhere different tomorrow or next week or next month. I'm talking mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We just don't know. There was a gentleman who wrote a book called The Happiness Project. And very interesting book. He went all over the world. He visited tribes, he visited places in Europe, and he came up with what makes us happy. And he sold his great big fancy house. And he took his wife and his 2 kids and moved to, I'm very sure, a beautiful one, a trailer park. Because what he found is we are supposed to live in villages. And when we live in villages, we feel good. And I can attest to that. When I was a single mom and I moved to a new town, I was in a trailer park. And we really were this little village unto ourselves. I got so much help. I got so much care. It was amazing. And then years ago when my husband lost his job and we were living in our RV trying to survive, we lived in a trailer park. And it was funny because almost everybody was our age and everybody had gone bankrupt. Everyone there. And that's why they were living in their RVs for the same reason we were. And it was wonderful. So it doesn't mean we all have to move to trailer parks because there's just not enough of those trailer parks. But it does mean that we need to be connected. And another thing that is often said is that what happens in a big city and why people feel so alone is that we're meant to say hi to everybody we meet. We're meant to interact with the people we see on a regular basis. And if you live in New York, you can't do that. If you live in LA, you can't do that. And so that's why so many of us feel alone when we're in a big city, or any city for that matter. But kindness does come in so many ways. There was a psychologist and his sister came from Europe to visit him. And so sometimes information can really be a kindness. And she told him she was leaving her husband. And he said, seems like a really nice guy. He spends way too much time with his daughter from his previous marriage. And so I am going to leave him. So her brother, who was a psychologist, just waited and waited. About week 3, he says, I really want to talk to you. And she said, okay. She said, you're saying that you're going to leave your husband and you feel abandoned. So why do you feel abandoned? When did you first feel that in your life? Well, when my dad took my sister all the time and didn't take me. And guess what? She realized she wasn't mad at her husband at all. And that's something I try to do now. If I'm triggered by something, where did this come from? And is this really that person I'm upset with? Or am I upset with somebody from 50 years ago? So on that note, I will love you and leave you. And thank you for listening. I hope you got some good information out of it.